There's a school of thought that the inline three-cylinder motorbike engine, the triple, is the motorbike equivalent of a nice ribeye steak. It's succulent and fatty enough to be satisfying at the bottom end, but it's got a ripping flavoursome edge to it as well, which makes it fun at the top of the rev range. It's the best of both worlds, the torque of a twin, the revs of a four-cylinder. At least that's how the old wives' tale goes. In this video, I'm going to be exploring the old wives' tale by comparing two of my favourite triple-powered bikes, the Triumph Street Triple RX and the Yamaha MT-09 SP. And although this video will be a comparison back-to-back of those two bikes, it's more about the engines, about who does the triple best.
Triumph is perhaps the most famous maker of three-cylinder motorbike engines. This is the new Street Triple RX with a 765cc engine. It's got 130 horsepower up at 12,000 RPM and 80 Newton meters of torque at 8,500 RPM. So it's a revvy thing. It's got a bore of 78 millimeters and a stroke of just 53.4 mil, meaning it's quite over square. It's revvy with a bore to stroke ratio of 1.46.
And in the blue corner from the dark side of Japan, it's the Yamaha MT-09 here in shiny Erlens-clad SP format.
And it's a bloomin' cheat is what it is. It's a whole 125cc bigger than the Triumph at 890cc. It has 13 Newton meters more torque than the Triumph, and its 93 Newton meters of peak torque happens 1,500 RPM lower at 7,000 RPM. There is no replacement for displacement. However, it's less revvy. Peak power happens at 10,000 RPM, 2,000 RPM earlier than the Street Triple, but peak power is 119 horsepower. That's 11 less than the Triumph.
Perhaps surprisingly, the MT-09 has exactly the same bore as the Triumph, 78 mil, but it's got a slightly longer stroke at 62.1 mil. So it's still over square, but it's got a slightly lower bore to stroke ratio of 1.256. Exciting stuff, I know, but that should mean it feels gruntier out on the road. Okay, let's take a look at the bikes. The Triumph Street Triple RX is the pricier of the pair in this video. It's £12,895, so well over £1,000 more than the MT-09. But obviously this is the RX. There is the RS with the flat bars, and that's £12,200. So still more than the Yamaha by a couple of £100, but the difference isn't actually as great as all that. This is 10 kilos lighter. This is 188 kilos claimed, and the seat height is 839 millimeters. So I'm 6'3". I'm taller than that cyclist. I reckon I could have had him. And I do make it look a little bit silly than I do for most bikes. Now, being the RX, you've got reasonably high pegs, but you've got much lower handlebars than on the flat-barred RS model. You've got these sort of clip-ons which sit an inch above the beautifully machined yoke. But you know what? For a bar with clip-ons, they're not real clip-ons, it's pretty comfortable. But a very different riding position to the MT-09 SP. I'm just comparing them because that's what I happen to have in my garage at the time of filming this video. But as I said, it's more about the engine and the riding experience. Went a bit French. Despite being another three-cylinder naked bike, the MT-09 couldn't really be more different than the Street Triple. It's cheaper for a start. This is £11,600, and if you want the non-SP, that's £10,300. This is also about 10 kilos heavier than the Triumph at 198 kilos, and you've got a slightly lower 825 mil seat height. So again, I am tall and a bit fat, and I'm going to make it look absolutely tiny, like it's disappeared up my bum crack. And I don't want it to disappear up my bum crack, because in some ways this does feel a bit cheaper in areas than the Triumph. The seat covering is that proper kind of cheap stuff that you feel is going to tear quite easily. And I don't know, there's some tape around the cables here. It's not as nicely finished most places than the Triumph, but it's not bad. It's a lot easier to see the screen on this and see where you are in the rev range. The mirrors are fairly standard ones, they're not the sexy bar ends that you've got in the RX, and the riding position is way more upright. Even compared to the Street Triple RS, this is a more upright bike. Yes, Yamaha has focused on this generation of putting more weight over the front end, and it is more front-endy compared to the old MT-09, and you've got this two-piece seat, but it's still a much more relaxed, upright, naked riding position. The bike also feels shorter, so you feel closer to the front wheel on this. You've got keyless go on this one, you've got cruise control as standard, and this one's got optional heated grips as well, and it's also got billet levers, rear sets, the exhaust, stuff that isn't standard. It feels more relaxed. And obviously one of the big reasons we like motorbikes is because they make a nice noise. So which do you think sounds best? I'm going to have the mic on me so it's not right in the way of the exhaust, but let's see how the Triumph sounds. It is warmed up. Do not fret, mechanical sympathy enthusiasts, I am one. Come on, dashboard. Anytime this, yes, good afternoon to you too. Am I neutral? I am. Sounds pretty good. It has got a limiter when you're stationary of about 7,000 RPM. No limiter and quite a lot louder.
For the next part of the test, I want to compare the Triumph and the Yamaha, just their in-gear acceleration. So I'm going to go from 30 to 70 on this dual carriageway in third gear and just try and roughly see what the time difference is. Right, we are doing 30, there's nothing behind me, so I'm not feeling like a complete dick. And let's go to 70, full throttles, third gear, sport mode. There we go, that is it on the Triumph. Okay, same test, 30 to 70 in third gear and sport mode on the MT-09 SP, full throttle. Okay, I'm just doing a bit of very unfun dual carriageway on the Street Triple RX. The length forward riding position, I really like it for doing kind of higher speeds on this, because you're canted forward and the wind is bracing your body and you can kind of lean on the wind. On the more upright RS, you feel a bit more like a windsock, as I imagine I will on the Yamaha as well. So yeah, it might look less comfortable, but actually for cracking out long days on motorways, I think this would be the one to have. I haven't got cruise control. That's standard, I think, on the Yamaha. It's an option on this because you have to replace all of this switch gear down here. But I've got a fuel gauge, I've got a range readout if I go through the menu. There we go, on this I am less braced against the wind. I feel a lot more like I'm a big sail on a big brown yacht somewhere near Calcutta. I have got cruise control as standard though, and this one has got heated grips as well. So yeah, I could do some motorway journeys on this, but it's just not as natural a riding position for bracing yourself against the wind as on the Triumph. Alright, slowing down, 70-40 on the Triumph IG. Those stylemmas, they shed speed faster than you can think, to be honest. The front end already feels magnificent, and then yeah, and then you end up just using the revs on corner exit. Okay, braking 70-40. Yeah, the MT-09, the brakes don't have as much instant bite as on the Triumph. This has got rubber lines. The Triumph has braided lines. I'm not sure if that would make the difference, but this just doesn't feel like there's power there, but the front end compresses more. You've got a softer fork. It feels like it's going to take a bit more stopping than Le Triumph. Just while I'm cruising to twisty roads on the MT-09, my first impressions jumping from the Street Triple are that this does feel more powerful. Nearly everywhere, you've just got more instant shove. You're not waiting for it to spin up as much as you are on the Triumph. And I don't know how much of that is down to sharper throttle mapping on the part of the Yamaha. I imagine in sport mode, you know, when you're asking for 20%, maybe it's giving you a bit more than 20%. It just feels more accelerative, and it feels cross-country. For the same amount of perceived effort on the bike, you are going kind of 10-20 miles an hour faster on the MT-09. Whether that's displacement advantage, I don't know. It's a bigger engine, it's a bigger bike. This, when you're really going for it in the mid-range at big throttle openings, makes your eyes go a bit more funny than the Triumph does, to use some technical terms here. It feels closer to a litre bike, which it is. Is that a surprise? Probably not. But anyway, we're going to get some twisty roads because I think there's more to discover about how this differs. Oh, even just bimbling through this 50 limit. The Street Triple RX's riding position, the Erlin's front end, the damping. It's firm, but it's so well controlled, and it feels just really stable and really supportive in the corners. It feels like it wants to go quite faster on the racetrack. It works on the road, but you just know that this would have the edge on the Yamaha on track. Thank you. The fueling on the Street Triple is really smooth. Even in sport mode, you've got a really kind of soft initial crack of the throttle, and then it ramps up quite quickly. But you can put around town on this without any jerkiness or awkwardness. It's a pretty wonderful thing. But how does the engine feel? Well, it takes a little while to wake up. It's not got as much instant shove as I remember the Yamaha having, but then you have to go looking for the power, and that's kind of fun. If you like riding an old two-stroke or revving out an old inline four to get the most out of it, you'll love this motor. It's got an addictive howl, and you just want to always be up high in the revs. Yes, it's got mid-range, it's got some triple shove, but this tune of this engine, to get that 130 horsepower, they've had to move all the power higher up in the revs. The Yamaha, which I'm going to ride in a second, from memory has got just more accessible power than this. You don't have to go looking for it as much. And I think that just ties into the Street Triple's racier feel. You've got a sports bike chassis. It's not a bespoke naked bike chassis like on the Yamaha. So yes, my feet are high, my arms are lower, but actually the whole thing kind of feels stiffer, more composed. Firmer certainly, but not uncomfortably so. It's just, it makes stuff like this, hunting magpies on piles of dead bird, a really addictive experience. And then obviously you've got mighty brakes. It's a really good bike, but it's got super sport roots that you can tell the Yamaha doesn't have. And this, believe it or not, is actually shorter geared than the Yamaha. I always thought the Yamaha was shorter geared because it's got so much immediate thrust. This is running a 16 tooth front, 47 tooth rear. The Yamaha's got a 45 on the rear and a 16 on the front. So this is something like 4% shorter geared than the Yamaha. But it's just, when you crack it in second gear, low in the revs, from memory, and I'm going to check this in a second, it doesn't take off like the Yamaha does. It revs harder and higher, but you're going to have to work it harder. As a consequence of having to rev it harder to get the power, I think the Street Triple has slightly lost some of its original hooligan DNA. Obviously, this would absolutely bugger off from my first bike, my 2009 Street Triple, which had 105 horsepower, something like that. That was much more focused in the mid-range and down low, but at the top end, this would go away very quickly. But I don't know if that makes it more fun. This has got a slightly elastic response to the throttle. You gun it, once the revs get up to the higher mid-range and the top end, it sods off, it's very quick, but you haven't got that instant shove that I think I'm going to have on the Yamaha. Is there a replacement for displacement? We'll find out next. Hey. Right, on the Twisty Road on the MT-09. Unsurprisingly, it takes less force to tip it into a corner. I am comparing dildos with drawing pins, obviously, because the RX has got those kind of clip-on things, but even compared to my memory of the RS, this tips in with a bit less effort, but actually the steering itself, I would say, is a little bit sluggish compared to the RS from memory. The suspension, this is less well damped, I would say. The bumps in the road unsettle your line a smidge more than on the Triumph. But again, that Triumph's got the fancy Erlin's fork on it and the Erlin's shock. This has only got the Erlin's shock and non-Erlin's forks. But more of the time, this does feel naughtier on the road. It's still an exceptional bike for cornering on. It is absolutely loads of fun. Where this differs in terms of engine feel is you come out corners with a lighter front end, with the handlebars kind of skimming across the surface of the road. You know that feeling when the front wheel's hovering? You get that a lot more with this engine because it's just got more punch. Both though are fast. Both are proper fast. I'd say that you just find yourself going faster on the Yamaha more easily, more effortlessly. It's more my speed. It's more my jam on the road. I love a Street Triple. But I remember the first time I rode an MT-09, I was a bit like, oh, have I been nailing my colours to the wrong mast all this time? Because this engine is sodding brilliant. I don't think there is a replacement for displacement. I'm sorry, trying. The bigger engine on the road, it's more laid back, yet more fun. There's no real downside to this. Yes, I've got 10 horsepower less, but the horsepower I have got is arriving 2,000 RPM earlier than on the Triumph. My torque is arriving earlier, and I've got, what was it, 13 Newton meters more torque. It's all just coming at me quicker with less effort. Kind of makes it more fun. Yes, I think handling-wise, chassis-wise, the Triumph knocks this into a cocked hat, certainly on the track, but on the road, it doesn't make any difference. This is still a brilliantly fun bike to corner hard on. Obviously, they're on different tyres. There's a lot to consider. Like I've not talked about geometry either, mostly because I can't remember numbers very well. But from a gut feel point of view, the MT-09 feels more fun. Doesn't mean the Triumph's a bad bike. It means it's probably better on track. But anyway, let's head back to me for some sort of more thought out conclusion, possibly. Can't promise too much.
Okay, to sum up, I've had a terrible day riding these two bikes back to back to work out which is the best triple. And for me, it is the MT-09 for the road. For the sort of riding I do, this is gruntier, it's more flexible, it is more fun more of the time than the Triumph triple. But if you're going to take one of these bikes on track, get the street triple, specifically the RX, because my God, the front end on that RX is one of the best front ends I've used on any naked bike, apart from possibly the old KTM 890 Duke R. I've not ridden the 990 Duke R yet. It gives you loads of feedback, loads of confidence. It makes you want to ride it like an old 600, proper high corner speeds, loads of power at the top end. Whereas me on the road, at speeds I ride, yes, the front end on this is a bit more vague. The chassis doesn't feel as sporty. But for me, the grunt of that engine, it's a bit softer in places. It is more fun more of the time on the road. And I'm putting that down mostly to the long stroke engine, as we talked about at the start of the video. So I would pick the MT-09 and save some money. But for me, this video has proved that if you're looking at a middleweight triple engine, there are two quite similar engines here, but they've got very different characters. So buy the one that suits you. How's that for a cop-out? This would be the one for me, though. Anyway, if you made it this far through the video, thank you very, very much. It's been a bit of a palaver to put together. The weather's changed and there's been stuff driving past me all day. Go down to the comments and tell me whether you'd have a street triple or a Yamaha MT-09 or something else. And yes, I'm not an engineer, so there's almost certainly mistakes in this video. Point them out and be as facetious as possible about it. And I'll see you next time. Once you've subscribed, goodbye.